Kaiser Adolf Hitler I the Hohenzollern was abducted in December 1943. He was illegally held prisoner in Yugoslavia until his escape in 1959. He had to separate from his official male consort for a few weeks, who had to leave for family reasons with a semi-public farewell. People who noticed that the two appeared to have gone their separate ways were wrong in assuming they had broken off their relationship completely. Kaiser Adolf decided to catch up on a few dinner invitations whilst his consort was away, which he had declined initially, that he thought he probably should not have originally if he wanted to look ultra-polite. Not that he thought he really needed to be that polite. As a point of reference, there were constant sporadic attempts to harm, kill, or abduct him since he was abdicated to by Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1918, and he became Prince Imperial. I do not want to create the impression he made bad choices that were unusual which led to his abduction. They had been at him for decades. Those attempts became more frequent after he became a politician, won a seat in Parliament, and was elected Chancellor in 1933. Then more frequent again after he was coronated, whilst dating a Jewish rabbi, His Imperial Majesty Kaiser Adolf I Hitler the Hohenzollern in 1940, as successor to his cousin Kaiser Wilhelm II. They had gotten at him before, and he had some serious issues on occasions. They also tried to remind him of his almost fatal wounding with a machine gun to try to cause him a nervous breakdown back to his severely traumatized state after being wounded. He spent almost 5 years in hospital between 1917 and 1922. He accepted an invite to a dinner that he had received invites to repeatedly, with a female listed as the host. A female called Sadie, surname Einstein, his biological cousin, same as her hideously evil half-brother Albert was. He put on his usual formal dinner uniform, including his dress shirt, top hat, and coat, and had his security team take him to the venue. He was Kaiser, monarch, and chancellor, so security was supposed to be tight, in lockdown wartime Berlin. When he arrived, he was taken in a private side entrance. Whilst he was being welcomed and taking off his coat, his guards and staff were executed near the car, and he didn't hear a thing. It was a very strange dinner, held in multiple smallish function rooms in a hotel, instead of a secure private residence. The hotel was burnt out during the end of WW2 after he was abducted. It appears in historical footage of Berlin in 1945 labeled with rearranged letters to say Delon Hotel. The dinner itself was held in a small, elongated room which was quite cramped for room along the sides of the dinner table. Lots of disturbed giggling. There were tiny portions of everything until the main course. A single strawberry and syrup, half a metric teaspoon of caviar, one piece of tiny toast and jam, finger food gone mad. Little wooden cabinets, colorful pieces of material. Mildly disturbed giggling. The host of the dinner appeared to be strange. The guards appeared to have guns and white-on-white style suits. He, though one of his personal guards for the trip to the hotel, reappeared in a similar suit. During the bizarre dinner, he was asked what seemed like a casual, dating question by the female host, as if she had assumed he had split up with his male consort based on rumors. During the main course of French cubed beefsteak meatloaf and a choice of up to 5 vegetables, self-serve, she asked if he would be interested in publicly dating, getting engaged and all that comes after, including engagement, marriage, and eligible children. He chose 3 vegetables, all green, plus scalloped potatoes, and very politely casually declined, due to being homosexual and an official monarch-consort relationship with my other Webb family great-grandfather, Prince Sebastian, Habsburg. After some chit-chat and a lot of chewing, something was placed in his food after he accepted an offer of another serving. Whilst he was chewing away at it, he bit down on a very hard metal object that caused him to badly chip a tooth whilst he was trying to chew through his meatloaf, which was initially extremely painful. He was approached after appearing to have trouble chewing his food and asked if he was okay, in a very worrying way. He said he had a tooth issue and it would be best if he left as quickly as possible, not to be any bother, as he and his entourage were headed for Berghof after dinner and he could have it looked at when he got there. They decided to approach him and were overly intrusive when asking if he was okay. He repeatedly stated he thought he should just leave, but they insisted they wanted to help and ended up offering something for the pain before he left. They tried to talk him into a glass of red wine. He refused initially, saying he did not want to be any trouble, and red wine went straight to his head, but they insisted he could not possibly put up with the discomfort all the way to Berghof. He was talked into a small amount in the glass, about a third full, which he was told had something in it to help with the pain. When he drank the wine, they stared at him with demented surprised looks on their faces he drank it, staring at him sitting in his dinner seat. One side of his face started to go numb, and he suffered blurred vision. He suddenly lost the ability to hold himself upright whilst they stared at him, and fell face first into his meal plate, hurting himself in the process. Germans used extremely sharp forks back then, and he injured himself on one when his head hit the plate, awfully hard. The outside tine of his diner fork went into his chin up to the base, lodged into his chin sideways between the skin and the bone. He was suddenly reduced to a state of being slightly sideways on face down on a plate of a very pungent-smelling beef and gravy, with vegetables. There were mild lunatic-sounding crime celebrations going on as he started to lose more consciousness, whilst trying to stay aware. He was lying face down sitting at the table with his head sideways on, trying to open his eyes and move to sit upright, but only really being able to breathe and hear. He tried to gather himself to attempt to lift his head and attempt to get up with his arms. Every time he tried, his eyelids moved slightly, and he got a little response from his shoulder muscles, but couldn't actually keep his eyes open or move. Someone sat near him a chair at the side of the table and watched him. Whenever he tried to open his eyes and sit up, his shoulder muscles moved slightly and his eyebrows lifted a small amount, but it didn't result in him opening his eyes fully, moving his arms, or lifting his head. The person sat a few seats down the dinner table watching his repeated attempts to move, insanely giggling each time a part of his body moved slightly without it resulting in him sitting up. He was unconscious soon afterwards. He had vague memories of suddenly becoming more awake and aware, getting up somehow when nobody seemed to be around, and trying to make his way down a corridor back to a familiar room. He dragged himself through a door, and with extremely blurred irregular vision, starting slowly sliding along the wall down a long corridor, towards what looked like the elevator he arrived in. He inched his way forward trying to stay upright by leaning on the wall, making very slow progress. He was intercepted by someone who seemed to be hotel staff. Doorman Sam wandered over to him, gently grabbed him and said, "You can't check out anytime you like, you know." He was soon unconscious again. After WW2, Germany was unceremoniously semi-methodically covered in the wallpaper that was on the walls of the hotel Kaiser Adolf was abducted from in December 1943. It drove people mildly crazy, and there were countless incidents of people trying to remove the wallpaper with things like forks and knives in their spare time afterwards, where they just felt like trying to remove it with their fork. They may still do it. There were also enormous amounts of pattern material with all the carpet and rug markings from the hotel floor coverings as well. People still look like a collective display of one of the rugs on the floor near a door in the hotel in December 1943 at sports events, like a coordinated display they worked on, some days. He later almost totally woke up and asked if they were at Berghof, where he was supposed to be going after the dinner, whether they were in the air raid bunker, and if the place been bombed. Then realized he was on a noisy train. He was given a drink and was unconscious again shortly after. Kaiser Adolf was shipped unconscious to the former Yugoslavia, Kosovo approximately, to what was supposed to be a new underground subway tube train station. He was placed in the modified underground train station turned into a prison, with train yards above that were very busy. He was chained to the wall by system of chains on pulleys through a leg shackle above the knee, amongst other restraints. There was only a single window about 4 stories above the ground letting in natural light. They also had a shackle around one of his arms, so if they went in, they could swap them over and restrain him by one arm using the same pulley system through the shackle on his arm, and force him to hold one arm above his head. The station passenger and ticket window area were inside his cage cell, with Brandenburg Gate-style cell doors. There were also decorative archways in his cell, part of the passenger waiting area. His view through the bars to one-way mirror windows in the external wall directly outside his cell looked bizarrely like the view from the stage to back wall at the venue the Beatles first became well known in England. The Cavern. They kept him unconscious for weeks, then sexually assaulted him and stole his semen. They then let him come out of unconsciousness just enough for him to be able to move his head, but he could not keep his eyes open, and his head just rolled around on his shoulders. Whilst he was in that state, barely conscious at best, they got the strange female from the dinner pregnant with his stolen semen in front of him on the other side of the bars, with chatting like commentary as if it was a ritual. They made those weird sweaty-brained, panting, crime ever so slightly panicked, self-disgusted, "We're actually doing this" noises of, "Oh how horridly exciting," when they got evil Sadie pregnant with the illegally inbred extortion plot, then drugged him unconscious again. When they were sure she was pregnant, they threw away the rest of the semen. They then attacked him whilst he was unconscious and chemically sterilized him, making him infertile. They had one of the hosts from the dinner's male associates sexually assault him several times to check if it had worked, and he was genuinely infertile. Repeatedly checking if he had viable sperm in a microscope on the other side of the bars. When they were sure he was sterile, they let him wake up. He tried to stand up and started yelling for help with a "hey." He ended up yelling towards the only source of light above his head, the elevated window. He was emaciated and had not eaten anything substantial in weeks. He could move around but was chained up so that he could not move freely. He had to lug heavy chains around and move them on pulleys to get to different parts of the cell. When he woke up, his imperial seal dimatrix, made from titanium and for sealing official imperial documents in wax, was still on his clothes in 3 pieces disguised as a lapel pin and 2 buttons. He stripped the parts off his clothes, found a suitable sized crack in the wall of the cell, hid them in there and covered them over. He always secretly guarded where he hid the parts whenever someone was in the building. Everything else that was on his person at dinner had been confiscated, and the matrix was a particularly important imperial document authorization requirement. The shackles on his leg and arm had been deliberately placed so that he would not be able to get his pants or shirt off all the way. If he managed to get them off one leg or arm, they would be stuck above the knee and on the arm on the other and would not come totally off.